In this chapter, we're going to work with some multi-channel live drums and apply what we've learned about hit points, folder tracks, group edit and quantize, as well as slice rules. Then we'll import these drums into our project and work with mixing, mastering, and dither. Here's a project that contains a very basic multi-track drum recording. Each drum was recorded into its own track through a separate microphone. Before we can adapt this performance to other projects, we need to slice it so it can be quantized. Open the sample editor for the kick drum by double-clicking the waveform. Select the Hit Points tab and move the threshold slider to remove the lower volume sounds from the other drums. These lower volume sounds are also known as crosstalk or spill. Close the sample editor, but do not click Slice. We'll do that in a moment. Now repeat this process for the snare top and hi-hat. We may need to disable a few hit points around measure 9 and 10 to accommodate the fill. We won't use the threshold control for setting hi-hat hit points because of all the conflicting signal levels. Rather, let's set these hit points by using the beat setting and a resolution of 1/8. Now that we have hit points for each of the three main percussive instruments in this drum part, it's time to slice. Open the Quantize panel. Enable the Edit Group function on the drum's folder track so that our slicing will affect all the drums. Select any drum part. Let's use the kick drum. Notice that a new part of the Quantize panel appears called Slice Rules. This pane only appears if there's more than one track with different hit points. Here we can tell Cubase how to prioritize the slicing in case any two hit points conflict with one another. Let's set the kick drum to 5 stars, the snare drum to 4 stars, and the hi-hat to 3 stars. There's also a range setting. Its value is shown in red on the editor to help you visually determine if the range value is correct. Click Slice. All of the tracks in our group folder are sliced at identical positions. They can now be quantized, but keep their relationship to one another so we avoid any phase issues. Now we will try something different. We will use the original unquantized drum tracks in our song. To do that, let's import the drum files into our project. And after some careful positioning to make sure the downbeat of the new drum aligns with the downbeat of our MIDI drums, we have an entirely new drum part and an entirely new feel.
Don't hide, my friend. After the storm, there's our double rainbow. Can't wait to see you again.
Of course, you can keep any of the MIDI drum elements you like and build a hybrid rhythm section. What started back in Chapter 3 as a simple guitar and voice performance has become a fully produced song. Now it's time for a proper mixdown. The subject of mixing music could fill an entire library, so we'll just touch on a few of the basics here to get you started. One golden rule when using EQ is to cut rather than boost whenever possible. Often, a mix becomes muddy because of too many similar frequencies fighting with one another. For example, there's no musical content in the human voice below about 100 Hz. So the only thing you'll have recorded in a vocal track below 100 is going to be noise, often things like motors or traffic. To get rid of that clutter, we can roll off the low end of Janelle and Andrew's vocal tracks. You can apply the same general rule to other tracks, for instance, rolling off the high end of bass drum parts. This will remove unwanted hiss without affecting the sound of the instrument. Most instruments have a signature frequency. To ensure you retain the instrument's quality and clarity, use care when cutting and boosting. The Steinberg Knowledge Base and the Cubase Users Forum are great sources of information about mixing technique. Remember that Cubase comes loaded with a comprehensive library of track presets, which you can load and then fine-tune to taste. These track presets will give you a good idea of how to configure compressors, EQ, and effects for different types of tracks. Finally, we'll apply some subtle panning to widen the stereo image. Now it's time to master this project. Just like mixing, mastering could fill a library, but here are a few pointers to get you started. Open the editor for the master output bus. You'll notice there are no send effects available, only inserts. The last two insert effect slots are shown in a different color. Slots 7 and 8 are special because they're post-fader. This means they're the very last two steps in the entire signal chain and are not affected by the master fader. If there are two absolute rules with mastering, they are never clip, always dither. Dithering is a digital optimization on the data level that essentially smooths the rough edges of the digital recording process. Proper dithering is essential for a fully professional result, and dithering must be the last step in the process to work correctly. With that in mind, let's load up slot 8 with the UV22 mastering plugin. Set the bit depth according to your needs. Generally speaking, greater bit depth equals better sound quality but a larger file size. Let's use slot 7 for the maximizer plugin. The maximizer is a specialized form of compressor that will increase the perceived volume of your project, known as optimizing. Generally speaking, optimized settings below about 30% will provide a nice boost without becoming noticeable or even obnoxious. The most important thing the maximizer will do is prevent your output from ever going above digital 0 and clipping. The maximizer has a soft clip function that emulates the subtle compression found in analog tape saturation. For most types of music, the soft clip feature works very well and delivers flattering results. You'll have to experiment with the setting to find the best fit for your style of music. Now we're ready to export. This time, let's use a WAV format for the highest sound quality. And let's place a copy of our final mix onto our project for future reference. Perfect! This one's in the can. Let's move to Chapter 11, where we'll look at the control room, studio mixes, surround sound, and ways to use Cubase 6 in a live environment.